Danny Daly here. Memories of Mass at St. Patrick's Catholic Church, Cooma. Memories of Mass at St. Patrick's Catholic Church, Cooma. Well, the earliest Masses I remember are when we lived in Berridale in the 70s. But and there was a Catholic church in Berridale which we went to. But the earliest memories of Cooma, I think we possibly went during Berridale years a little bit. There might have been some things going on at St. Pat's, but I seem to vaguely recall that. Maybe, but my memories of St. Pat's is often with school, because with St. Pat's across the road from the church, we went to an occasional service at school, but we went every Sunday for the most part, sometimes Saturday night, and sometimes Sunday morning, and even in the Sunday evening at times. I remember a particular Christmas time I went, where we went to a weird service. It was the afternoon mass for, I think it might have been even Latin or Italian or something. It was an afternoon mass, just a very different sort of mass with a different crowd who I didn't normally see. But normally mass, for the most part, it usually bored me a bit at times. But I would go through the whole ritual. I would kneel when you had to kneel and stand when you had to stand and sit. And I'd recite the recitations of the Mass service. And I'd pray the Our Father, and I'd sing the songs. I generally knew the songs. Of course, I was an altar boy for a while, but I'll talk about that some other time. But I would go along with the Mass service and follow it, and you'd get the bulletin. Normally when you entered the church, you'd have the bulletin, and I'd often grab my own bulletin, or the family would have a bulletin, and I would look at the bulletin a bit. And I remember when you come into the church, you genuflect, as it's called, or you kneel and you genuflect, and you sort of look up at the big crucifix, the big cross up behind the altar, and sort of, I'm not sure if you do the sign of the cross when you genuflect. You might, actually, I can't remember for sure. But usually you kneel down, you sort of bow and kneel down. You don't really bow, but you kneel before you enter the pew where you sit for the Mass, and I generally would do that as well for the most part, I think. I follow the tradition of the Mass for the most part, and if you really must know, even though it was not exactly deeply entrenched in me, the faith of it all, I did believe it, I guess. I hadn't really studied out thoughts of belief terribly much back then. I didn't really try and work out what I believed just then. I mostly was a follower, following my parents' faith, but I did believe it. I was following it, but I did generally believe it, I guess. I think I didn't have any real concepts of salvation and stuff like that. I knew the word. The Bible I did not study growing up in St. Pat's years, hardly at all. I remember once in a service looking at Galatians in a Bible in a pew, just opening up a book of Galatians. I didn't read any of it, but I just noticed it was one of the epistles. But we had a Catholic Bible at home, of course, a big hardback St. Joseph's one. And I never really read it. I wasn't a biblical thing growing up, not until my 20s when I got into the Bible more seriously. But Mass was, and the church in St. Pat's was like a T-shaped, like a cross-shaped. It had the main hall, but there was extensions put on sometime during the 80s on either side, sort of wings, and we'd sit anywhere practically in the church for family. We didn't have a specific place where we always sat. It wasn't really quite like that with us. We sort of, wherever we were, we didn't really quite sit in the front rows exactly very much, but sort of usually at the back a bit. We'd probably more often than not sit, but it wasn't a specific rule for our family. We could sit anywhere, and some people, when they go to churches, they often sit at the same place all the time, whereas our family wasn't really quite like that. We'd sort of sit in the wings a lot, and we'd sit in the main hall a lot, and it wasn't really any particular rule where we sat. But I followed the faith, and it was spiritual. I do remember the smell of the candles, particularly. Recollections of St. Pat's Catholicism are quite strong, probably still. And it was a little bit boring at times, but I didn't really mind it. And when I was an altar boy, I enjoyed it a bit. I would listen to it all, and I would listen to the sermons and the homilies that usually Father Barracotta preached, and they did prick the conscience. I do remember that much. My conscience was pricked because I was a little bit of a naughty boy. I was pinching a bit in the 80s, and I'd argue a bit with my family. They're just normal squabbles of siblings and things. But yeah, generally though, happy enough memories of St. Pat's, of masses at St. Pat's, and yeah, I miss it.